Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our probably sleep-deprived NBA insider, Bill Ryder. Bill, you were at the Lakers game last night, live and in person. The league is off and running. How you feel? And then you had your radio show this morning. Did you sleep at all?
No. You never get to that slap happy, right? Like I woke up on very little sleep. Sometimes I'm angry. I woke up. I was in a weird kind of, I'm in so much pain.
What time were you getting up, LA time?
I got up at 4 a.m. my time, our time, LA time. And I didn't get home that late. So I got home probably midnight or 12:30, but I could not sleep. Yeah. So I'm rocking 2 hours sleep.
Okay. Well, we're going to see how this works out. I think it's going to be great, Bill. What could go wrong?
I'm excited.
What could go wrong? We'll find out. Later in the show, we'll talk about the Celtics and the Knicks and the odds on whether Boston can repeat. Bill, I know that you generally caution me not to overreact to one game, but I'm gonna, because man, did they look good last night. They looked absolutely ridiculous. We're going to talk about that and how Cat looked and the new look Knicks, and we'll also talk about the new look Wolves and them having to figure some stuff out. But first, we got to start with LeBron and Bronny. You were there last night. They made history. You wrote about it for CBSSports.com. Highly recommend everybody go and check that out. Set this scene for us. Tell us how it went last night.
All right, I will. Let me just say that I am not sharing in sort of the merriment and the adulation and the, I don't know, positivity that some of my colleagues around the country are. So by all means, like, yang to my yin, course correct me. Maybe I've become okay. So I was excited to be there. It felt like it was going to be really cool. No one told me personally, but what everyone expected would be the second quarter. And as you know, that's what happened. Lakers looked pretty good, had a nice little lead, about 4 minutes left in the second quarter. In fact, before that, LeBron took a little time out, and it was like, okay, LeBron's going to sit on the bench, and they're probably going to have him and Bronny going together. And that's exactly what happened. And because you know how this works, John, I'm there specifically to write Bronny and LeBron. Doesn't matter what Rui Hachimura could have scored 50 points. Who cares, right? It was about that moment. So I noticed when LeBron and Bronny stood up, the arena kind of didn't at first. And so as they walked to the scorer's table, it sort of built to it was like a rustle, and then people kind of got excited. And then finally, as they got to the scorer's table to check in, the arena kind of noticed it, and the place got really exciting. There was an energy to it. You know, you've been in those moments, and I'm telling you, it dissipated really quickly. He steps on the floor, and it's almost, at least for me, and I asked some other guys, they had the same impression, that the air went out of the arena. Now, Bronny hits that three-point shot that he eventually got to look at because LeBron created for him. Maybe it changes. Bronny puts a basket back or gets a block. Maybe it changes. At least for me, and we talked about this when I was at the Combine, my overarching thought was back in May in Chicago, man, he looks small. And that was against guys trying to make the league. In person, to my eyes, he looked so tiny out there. There was a moment where I think Ingles switched onto him, and Ingles looked like he was 8 feet tall.
Yes.
And so I think, look, it was neat and it was cool and emotional for LeBron and Bronny. And that's a real thing. And I love that for those guys. And maybe I'm too cynical in my reporting and my worries. Aaron points out it was the main matchup. And my worries that he's not going to make it because I talked to so many scouts who said so many not great things. I thought it was anticlimactic. And I thought, at least for me, there was this sort of note for me, John. I'll be curious how it looked on TV in his 3 minutes of, this is not a fairy tale. This is not a happy moment. What I wrote was, this isn't a celebratory moment. It's the beginning of something that could be really hard for this poor kid.
So there's a lot going on here. I had the HQ hits for this last night, both pre and post game, and we were talking through all of this. And I think, all right, multiple things can be true at once, right? On the one hand, the NBA at its base is entertainment. And that was a moment of entertainment. LeBron James, one of the, if not the greatest player in NBA history, wanted this to happen. He's made history a zillion different times, and he did it again last night. You had the Griffies there. They're taking pictures. You're there specifically to write a column for CBSSports.com. Everybody's talking about it. It was a moment. Now, right or wrong, whether or not people feel a certain way about LeBron influencing this thing to happen and putting his very powerful, influential thumb on the scale to make it happen and force Bronny, his son, to the Lakers and no other team, probably well ahead of schedule, should probably be a sophomore at USC or some other college right now.
Absolutely should be.
Okay. And it was an entertaining moment. So then we watched it happen.
So
now
you were moved when he walked on the floor because I felt trepidation. I didn't have the response I thought I was going to have.
Moved might be strong because as we've discussed, as a Philadelphian, I'm dead inside. So
there's nothing there.
A lot of
got it.
It's just blackness and like
Understood.
you know, as the Simpsons said, you know, 50 Slim Jims and some darkness inside. That's all I got. But it was entertaining. Okay, we put that to the side. Now we go to the basketball component. Everything you said was right. He looked small as hell. He comes in. The Lakers were on a heater, and what happened? He's and you know I am not a single game plus minus guy in general.
Right. No. But I know where you're going.
But the Wolves went on a run, and he was -5 in 3 minutes, and all of a sudden JJ came out with the hook and was like, we got to get this kid out of there.
3 minutes. Dude, I went full Philadelphian because when they pulled Bronny, I know this is wrong. I know this is not okay. I'm just not going to lie. I wanted the Lakers to lose by 4 or 3 or 2 so badly, just for the sake of my story. Yeah, because it was to your point, it was a quick, was it a 7-2 run, whatever it was. It was a quick, like,
and the Lakers looked good, and then they got a bucket. Yeah. It was, so I'm watching this whole thing and I'm like, okay, like, let me just like try to not think about him as LeBron's kid and just look at him. One, my first thought is exactly what you said. He's small. 2, they're trying to hide him on angles. He's supposed to be, to the extent that he has an NBA level talent, it's supposed to be he could be a good defender. Well, okay, you're throwing him on Ingles for a reason. Ingles is 1,000 years old and moves slower than you and I both. And then on top of that, when he did get the ball, there was that 1-3 that I wanted him to make because I felt bad for him. But
I felt bad too.
But when they were giving him the ball, he was immediately giving it up. He looked super uncomfortable. I think the nerves hit him. So then, you know, JJ gives him the hook and everybody goes, okay, they got the movement out of the way, ship him off to the G League, right? Which is what I think is going to happen. However, the thing that I think a lot of us didn't think about, and I didn't think about until this morning, and I went and looked, G League season doesn't start until the first week of November. Camps don't even open until Monday. The draft is today. He's going to be on this team for a second. If you are, there's certain people who took DNP-CDs last night. Cam Reddish is one of them. If you're Cam Reddish,
you're put out, man.
Are you just like, I gotta like go into truck driving or oil painting or something? I gotta get out of this.
This is the point. So I made, you know how this goes when you're going into a story and you know what you're going to write. I knew I was going to write Bronny LeBron, right? So I called 1 million people and had the time to get a hold of some really smart executives. And I got just quote after quote after quote after quote of how Bronny's not very good. And I think I used 2 of them. I felt bad. I literally left stuff in my notebook last night that probably I should have used. And it also felt gratuitous. But one of the things that a guy said to me, to your point, that I didn't put in that story for the website, for CBSSports.com, that I thought was really interesting. He's like, Bill, the problem is not only is he not good enough, he is going to take spots from guys that are good enough when he's at the NBA level, if he's getting minutes, who need the minutes and want the minutes to prove that they should be there. And in the G League, he's going to be competing with guys who want to get where Bronny's already been and think that he cut the line. And his point was, it's not just opposing teams who are going to, like you saw Ingles sort of, you saw Julius Randle at a certain point early.
Julius Randle went right at him. He just
went right at him and shot over him. And Randle looked like he was 8'5", right? And Bronny looked like he was built like I was. But this guy's point was, it's going to be everybody. It's going to be everybody but his dad. And maybe AD or whoever, right? Or that his teammates, especially at the G League level, but also on the bench, and the adversaries are going to have these jealousies and these competitive realities that LeBron can't fight on Bronny's behalf. And it was in my brain, to your point, I was watching the game, this executive's words as I saw him get out there and other guys not get minutes. It's not going to be easy.
I mean, I know he only got 3 minutes, so like no big deal, right? In theory, but as I'm, again, just like from a basketball perspective, I'm watching this game and the Wolves are starting to climb back into it. And I'm like, man, the Lakers are thin. And like what you said earlier, as the Wolves start to climb back into this game, those 3 minutes where he's a -5 become critical. That's a thing. And then something else. And Aaron brings this up, and I think it's a good point, because I was kind of wondering the same thing last night. Anthony Davis looked amazing last night.
Dude, what a beast. He saved the LeBron's, the Jameses last night.
He was
Saved him.
the best player on the floor by a lot. And we can get into Anthony Davis in a second. But as I'm watching that, I'm like, where's LeBron tonight? Where's his head?
He was okay. I have a question for you.
Distracted a little bit?
So it's one of two things, because he was not at the same. He had a couple explosive moments where you go, oh, the almost 40-year-old body. He looked slower in general. He looked, yeah. So was he nervous? Possible, right? This is his son, and he's orchestrated all of this.
Which is saying something. He's LeBron James. How, like, for him, well, I know it's his kid. He wants his kid to perform well. It's a big stage. It's a historic moment. But, like, if it's a distraction, that's a problem.
Or just, if it's a distraction, I think he'll move past it, right? Because he's done enough, to your point.
One moment thing, sure.
Or maybe, look, it's possible he was nervous. It's possible as they walked out there together. Like, I like LeBron. For everybody watching, I don't hate LeBron James. I covered him. I know you, John. I did this job because I got to cover LeBron. There's a lack of a compass that LeBron has that I think a lot of famous people have. That if you're a president or you're a LeBron James or some big time actor, it's hard to have a sense of reality sometimes, right? The physics of the world bend to you in a way they shouldn't, and you sometimes don't understand that you can't change and affect everything. Maybe there's a world where he had a little bit of self-awareness as he walked down with Bronny, like, what? Oh, wow, I put my kid in a real spot. Because it's one thing to do a commercial with Cocoa Pebbles and to make sure that Jeannie and Rob Pelinka bring in your kid and to bring in your buddy, your podcast buddy, who, by the way, JJ Redick, very good start, one game, very good start. But you know that you've got a guy you trust that can kind of manage. You can set up everything. Once you get Bronny James onto the floor, it's like what they say about Hold'em. Doyle Brunson said, limit Hold'em, you fire the target. No limit Hold'em, it fires back. It's been limit Hold'em for LeBron as he maneuvered all these things until the moment they walked on the floor together. And then the target was firing back at his son, whatever, the Toronto going at him or whatever the situation. So maybe a little reality crashed into LeBron's brain. Like, this is going to be hard for my kid, because LeBron knows he's not good enough, right? Deep down, he knows he's not good enough. Maybe that, and I think he'll get past that. But to your point, if it's ugly, if Bronny struggles, if Bronny doesn't handle those struggles well, it's his kid. Does that affect him a little bit? Because he put him in this spot.
I wonder if it affects him. I wonder how much it affects Bronny and whether Bronny knows that he kind of cut, as to use your phrase, cut the line a little bit. I also just want to commend you on No Sleep, just folding in a seamless Doyle Brunson reference as a reformed poker player. Nicely done by you.
Yeah, let's go.
Really nailed that. It does fire back at you. There's a lot here that we need to unpack on the James conversation before we even get to the rest of the Lakers, because you mentioned, JJ Redick's debut. We talked about AD, that rotation being short, how they want to play. I want to talk about the actual basketball, but we should continue this LeBron and Bronny conversation just a little bit. So we're going to do that. We're going to take a quick break, and then more on the James family debut last night. On the other side, you're watching and listening to Beyond the Arc.
Get ready to raise your cup to Canadian football's biggest game of the year. There ain't no party like a Grey Cup party. November 17th on CBS Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. We are live on YouTube. Thank you for joining us over there. You can find us at Beyond the Arc CBS on our YouTube page. You can also find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please download, subscribe, leave a review. And if you're listening on Spotify, you can leave us a comment on this episode. Just look below the play button on the Spotify app in full screen mode, and you can tell us what you think of the show, or leave us a question or comment on LeBron and Bronny. Bill, as I mentioned, you were there last night up close and personal. You have some observations to share with us?
So, a few things. I already hit on this, but I want to circle back a little. I think the reason that reaction was so excited when they walked on the floor, and then I can't overstate how much it just felt like all the energy got sucked out of the place as soon as it was game time. I have seen him in person. Most of these Lakers fans haven't, right? Most of these fans haven't gone to a preseason game. And I'm telling you, the first time you lay eyes on Bronny in person, and it hits you how small he looks. I think it hit, I don't even know how many people are in the crypt. It's 18,000, 12,000.
It's striking.
It was, and I thought I was ready for it because I'd seen it at the combine. But these NBA players are bigger than combine players, right? That's part of the thing that gets you there. And the other thing that sort of struck me, and again, I don't know if I'm reading too much into this. I don't know if, sometimes you see as a reporter what you think is true. But I went to the locker room afterwards, and NBA locker rooms aren't like they used to be when I was covering the beat day to day. Guys hide. And AD was in there, and it was a huge scrum, and I know we're going to hear this. He had a huge game, And LeBron came in, classic LeBron, sat next to AD and was loud and made a bunch of noises because LeBron likes attention. Like if you cover LeBron, it's weird. He just can't take it when someone else. Bronny then came in and nobody noticed him. The angle where he walked in the door, walked by his dad, walked around the media. Nobody saw him and sat down in the locker kind of across the way. And I watched him, right? Because I was kind of turned and I thought, this is
Good
the
journalism.
least attention he's ever going to get. This is like the most anonymous he's ever going to be, because they'd already told us Bronny was going to be at the podium. So half the media people were at the podium waiting for him. The other half, like me, were like, oh, I'll go talk to AD until then. And Bronny, and it just struck me how LeBron was over there hooting and hollering, making noise, like, being funny because he's comfortable. And AD was literally at that moment talking about, I have a son and to be with your son must be amazing. And again, I'm not a psychologist, but I was watching Bronny right off to the side with AD and LeBron here. He looked in himself, introverted, looking down. It was just an interesting, like, catching his breath moment where it struck me. I don't know if it's a guarantee this was a joyous day for him, the way that it was for his dad. Yeah,
Well, okay, so I was thinking about all that last night too. That it was a show, right? They put on a show last night. Anthony Davis was there to play basketball. The rest of the Lakers ostensibly were there to play basketball. The James family were putting on a production. So were the Lakers. Is there any benefit to them getting this out of the way on the first night? And now it's like, okay, now we can go forward. Because the Lakers, again, Anthony Davis looked incredible last night. I have questions about the rotation. I have questions about JJ. I thought JJ performed well last night in terms of what he was doing with the lineup. And, Dalton Connect gets in and gets some run. And he's going to be a crucial part of the rotation because they're so thin. But JJ had talked about early in the season, Bill, how they want to play. And how obviously last season when they finished third from the bottom in 3-point attempts, that number needs to get jacked way up, right? And we're going to talk about what the Celtics did last night a little bit later in the show. He said he would like them to take 50. He was being hyperbolic. He was being JJ, pie in the sky. Let's take 53 pointers. That would be the most in NBA history on average, right? No chance of that happening. Last night they go 5 for 30. Like there's questions about this team. And then there's the LeBron thing. So at least they got that out of the way.
Yeah, look, given that LeBron telegraphed this was going to happen, and he said this at the post-game press conference. I've been talking for years about this. Given the fact that it was going to happen and Bronny was going to get to cut the line, you get it out of the way. Now, the right scenario would have been, we're not going to rush him. I'm not in a rush. I'm LeBron. I'm not going to rush. And Bronny, frankly, doesn't show up, doesn't have the roster spot that he has, doesn't have the contract that he has, goes to the G League, earns it, or at least has a famous Chicago Tribune columnist, guy named Clarence Page. He may have won a Pulitzer back in the day. I loved him back in the heyday of the newspapers in the 90s. Once said something to a talk that stuck with me, and he said, the key to my success, Clarence Page, is that I got to fail, anonymously. I got to be on 7A of the Chicago Tribune. And a lot of business leaders and athletes will tell you failure in private is the key to success in public. You sort of learn how to navigate that. In an actual perfect world, I think Bronny goes to the G League, struggles or doesn't struggle, fails where no one's paying attention. You and I and other reporters are not showing up to 12 G League games in a row. Maybe we go to the first G League game and that's it. That is the right way to handle it.
Very close to where the South Bay Lakers play and practice.
We both do. Yeah. So I handled the right way, given I think how LeBron set this thing up, but handled poorly by LeBron. I worry what is best for his kid. And to your point, I know we got to talk about the other stuff. They won the game. Bronny shouldn't have been out there. They're lucky that AD went super beast mode. I was thinking about you as AD played because you keep making the point. It's 2 All-NBA players. Yeah. And one of them played like it last night. And they beat, I think, what'll be a still pretty good team who had some growing pains of their own. Because of it, it's good that Anthony Davis did that because they lose by 3, 4, 5 when Bronny's -5. We are having a very different conversation today.
Yeah, the whole thing kind of was a little cringe for me last night when I'm watching it. And Aaron makes a good point. He's 20 years old. He's 20 years old, and at the moment felt too big in so many different reasons. And literally the players around him felt too big.
The game.
The moment, the whole bit. So, the G League camp starts on Monday, as we mentioned, cannot get here quick enough. I wish him Godspeed and we ship him off. And, who knows, maybe he grows 6 straight inches and puts on 50 pounds. I don't know.
I hope he does.
A lot of work. There's a lot of work to be done there. We should talk about the actual basketball, though, for both teams. Anthony Davis, I think, had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. He looked awesome in the Olympics. He comes in last night, and the way he played, he had talked about how last year when man, the Q rating on Rudy Gobert just continues to drop. Nobody likes this dude. And Anthony
everybody
Davis
everybody at the game, I won't name check them, but you know how these games, all the media come out and all the everybody's there.
Yeah, of course.
And you're making small talk. And I can't tell you how many people I defend off at my seat trying to work who wanted to tell me how Gobert sucks because he had just gotten the contract and Shams was walking around.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm like, he does. Literally, like 5 people. I'm like, A, I'm trying to write. And B, he doesn't suck. People hate. It's in fact, everyone hates him now. It's he's so maligned. It's unfair.
He is so maligned. And you mentioned his contract. Just quickly on that. The key part of that was that he declined his player option, and now his salary for the next year will be like closer to like $30 million, which gets them, in addition to getting Cat off the books, they were in cap hell, and now they have a little bit more flexibility. So kind of like a little Brunson-esque discount there. So look, Rudy Gobert has served that franchise well. But my point here was that Anthony Davis, when he saw Rudy Gobert win his 4th DPOY award, was a little ticked off and said, well, how come nobody's talking about me as Defensive Player of the Year award? Well, part of the reason why is that the Lakers weren't good enough as a team last year. Middle of the pack is not, if you're on a middle of the pack team, you're not, and SVG was talking about this on the broadcast last night. If you're on a middle of the pack defensive team, you're not going to be Defensive Player of the Year. That may or may not be fair because Anthony Davis as a single player, much like Wemby, is a Defensive Player of the Year caliber player. But last night, I thought he took a lot of it out on Rudy, especially when he made that block on Rudy and then flexed to the crowd. I was like, oh no, Rudy has to go home. This is not good for him.
Oh my dude, it was. And look, we've had this up. Rudy is Rudy, and he's going to get guys in the NBA don't like him, right? Players don't like him. And that, I think, humiliation that he experienced, it was humiliating at the Olympics and Dre flying out. The guy's still a good player. And I don't even know what he did last night, but he had a billion rebounds. I mean, he played fine. He was fine. He was good.
So, all right, let's talk about macro for both teams, and we can do Lakers first because they won the game. A couple of things stuck out at me. One, as I mentioned, just 33-point attempts. Again, not nearly enough. And then beyond that, they only make 5 of them. And I kept looking at the score sheet, and I'm like, all right, they get Dalton Connect. He's going to be in the rotation. He's going to need to jack up more. They don't have
get more minutes
again.
So clearly JJ, right, did not want to throw the rook. JJ's got to manage some of these guys. Even though they're thin, he's got some egos he's got to manage. And I don't think you can undersell that the Bronny thing, as you noted, it impacts guys' minutes. And so Connect is going to play a lot more minutes in 10 or 15 or 18 games. And he's going to be a guy who's going to be able to take and hit some of those shots. It was also nice to see Gabe Vincent out there. I was reminded, like, if that guy could become what we thought he was going to be when he arrived from Miami originally. I mean, they're not super deep, but I was definitely, like, the overreaction to one game. I was definitely rethinking I think I put them 11th, right? Like, there's a world.
I was going to ask you, did it change your mind at all last night?
So a buddy of mine who does radio in LA, who's a huge Lakers fan, knew about it and was actually angry and was trying to tell me why they were going to be 4 or 5. And so then I texted him, okay, they're going to be 2 now. That was my sarcastic response on their. No, I mean, like, I don't know. I still think 7 to 12 because I'm higher on the Spurs than everybody else. But whatever, 6 to 11 at least it's really close. Is Anthony Davis going to play 76 games? Because that was the most last year that he played since I think 17, 18 or around that time.
Yes.
Sure, I'm here. He plays 72 games. AD plays 72 games. They don't all have to be last night's monster game. And LeBron doesn't look like he's 40 once he turns 40 in December. I'm here to be wrong. I just think one of those two things can still go sideways when we get deeper than one game into the season.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the rotation. I mean, in fairness, Vanderbilt is still out and he's on the shelf, right? But I don't know that he's going to come in and be your offensive solve here. I'm looking at the score sheet right now. Rui took good. 4 threes. LeBron took 4 threes. That's not enough for that. Reeves
How many did AD
5.
take?
3, made 1.
More.
D'Angelo was the high water mark. He took 7, only made 1. Okay, that's fine in terms of attempts. Connect is going to have to be their main guy coming off the bench. And he only took 3. And he's a rookie and they're going to work him into but I'm just like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, all right, for the way that JJ wants to play, where's the volume coming from? And it's going to be an issue. It was an issue last year.
More from Anthony or more from AD. And that's something that's something that Darvin talked about, right? Last year, obviously wasn't able to get them to do. And I guess, more from Connect. And here's the thing. It's also one game, and the Bronny thing was front and center.
It's the only game we have to talk about right now. I want to overreact.
Oh no, I should. I'm here to overreact. It's JJ's first game, and other than like sort of getting chippy with Ant and being weirdly chippy with the media before the game, which I think is going to be a thing. Like,
I enjoyed that chippiness when they were jawing at each other. I enjoyed that because it was like a little bit, it was a little fraternal, like Olympic residue where they're like, we were teammates and we had a really good time. And now, by the way, I just like took you to the hole and got an and one on you. AD was in his bag last night. Let's talk about the Wolves though, because in the same way that I was asking you whether or not you were rethinking the Lakers, I was a little bit rethinking the Wolves pick from last night. So
it's early. Randall did not fit. I mean, but it's
bingo. And that's what I want to talk about.
Does Naj Reid take his starting job at some point? It was the thing that is that too soon to bring that up?
This is what I'm wondering. Okay. So I was talking about this with Sam Quinn last night on HQ, and both of us hit on the same thing that you just hit on. When you're looking at that team, how are you going to start a non-shooter in Rudy Gobert who has his own function? Again, whether you like him, he serves a purpose, and we've seen it multiple times. Alongside a not very good shooter in Julius Randle, who on top of that, forget about the usage rate being high. A lot of guys are high usage rate. The ball stopping thing. The ball goes in, he is in the upper percentile of guys who it takes him a while to get into his moves. It's something on like 6.5 seconds on average before he gives the ball up or shoots it. It's way too long. So how are you going to start somebody like that? And also, by the way, McDaniels, who's not exactly an offensive juggernaut and hasn't like taken that step forward that a lot of people have wanted him to.
I also thought, and I'm curious what it looked like on TV, I thought there were several moments where Ant was pressing and not moving the ball and forcing some, and he's great, but I couldn't tell if it's because his star is rising and he's getting more attention, but there were times where Randall was a ball stopper and you could kind of see Ant looking a little frustrated. And then the next time down or a couple times down, it seemed to me like Ant was like, well, the hell with this. I'm just gonna do hero ball. Like they're gonna have to get used to each other and build some trust, but it didn't. Also, I need more DiVincenzo minutes. Like I'm all like they're going to play him more too. Like how they figure that rotation out, and maybe even the starting five, I think is going to be very potentially different at game 15 and maybe even 40, right? Than it is game 1. And I trust that coach to figure that out. So I think they're going to be okay. We always just sleep on. I do that the sort of re-entry for newly calibrated teams with new stars or whatever Randall is. He thinks he is. That is never an easy process, and you saw that last night in that game.
I thought, despite the fact that the shot didn't fall consistently, that DDV looked good. Like that, he was getting up a lot of shots. They were closing with him. He's a guy who, like, you can see what his role is. And he's going to be good for them, and it's going to be great.
He's salty, right?
Yeah,
he's tough.
He's almost like, and I'm not saying that they have the same skill level, but he's almost kind of like a backup Ant in terms of personality and like attitude, and like he's checking up shots and the whole bit. So I love that fit. The Julius Randle solve is obvious, but I think either going to take a while or never going to happen, and he comes off the bench. But the problem is,
how do you keep him?
It would make so much sense because then all of a sudden he can be that guy who's sucking up shots and taking time with the ball and whatever. And it's okay because you're looking for that energy and that offense off the bench. The problem is he fancies himself, as you mentioned, a star. He's been an all-star and he's in a contract year.
Contract year, shipped out of New York for reasons that are legitimate, has a chip on his shoulder. So here's the question. I was talking to some people about this yesterday. What are the Timberwolves' real intentions with Randall? Like, what are they willing to pay him? What do they want to pay? How much of Randall is like, okay, this is what we think works versus this is a mask for just the salary we want to cut and the ability to get rid of Cat and build around Ant and sort of give some of the contracts we're going to have to give, including the extension to Rudy. So if they put him on the bench, which they probably should do in a basketball sense, he's not going to be a Timberwolf a year from now. Like a year from now, he can be overpaid and fill in who cares what city where it's not. We also don't know, like, if you're the Timberwolves, I was texting with the GM last night, not the Timberwolves GM about this. And his thing was like, well, you got to also just give it time. Like you got to see if Randall likes it here enough and gets enough buy-in that instead of you putting him on the bench, or he buys into whatever role because he wants to be a part of the Timberwolves. That's not after game one. And so the guy's point was,
It's not after game
also
one.
you got to like give him time, right? To just kind of, by starting, to buy into playing with Ant, to buy into what they're doing, to believe that they're a competitive team before you broach any of this stuff, right? It's to get to know you.
For sure. I mean, like, it's easy for us to sit here and go from
Right.
an academic standpoint to look at the fit and go, oh yeah, this makes no sense.
It
Let
looked bad,
Nas
though.
start, move him to the bench. All of
Yeah.
a sudden, this makes a lot more sense from a fit perspective. But from a chemistry perspective and from a player personality perspective and like everything that goes on with the NBA and how guys get paid and how they value themselves and how they view themselves, right? It's not after game one. I don't know that it'll be after game 60 going into the playoffs. This is one of those situations like when we were talking last year, we're immediately on the pod, you, me, Aaron, we all hit on in OKC, man, what are they going to do with Giddey? They can't close with Giddey. So what happens in the playoffs? Same deal.
Where's
here.
Giddey now? He's in
Exactly.
Chicago.
Same thing here where I'm like, are you going to even forget about getting him to come off the bench? First thing first, at what point do they look around and go, I don't know that we can close with Julius Randle? Like,
what's amazing, it's one game. I'm going to do a one game overreaction
it is one
that
game.
I don't mean. I'm going to say something that I know isn't real, but it hit me. And I wasn't able to watch the Knicks Celtics game the way that I'm sure you were, because I was at crypto for Lakers and doing media availability. But I was like, oh, one game in, but the trade was a disaster for both teams. What's my it's over.
With the exception of DDV, I'm high on him. I'm buying all his stock. Let's take another break, and then we'll talk about that other game. The Celtics looked absolutely amazing, and the New York Knicks, how do I put it, did not. We'll get into that on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc.
If you love football, this is the best time of the year.
This is as big as it gets. The stuff of absolute dreams.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John Gonzalez and Bill Ryder here. Just a reminder, we're back to 5 days a week. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And then also, we're going to be live most days, including all of this week, live on YouTube at noon Eastern. You can find us at Beyond the Arc CBS. Please hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Join us for the basketball conversation. If you love basketball like we do, we're super excited that it's back. I'm less excited about the Celtics looking like they're going to go 82-0, Bill.
Do they look that good? As good as the sort of box score? Because I couldn't really follow the way I wanted to.
So yesterday, you and I did our team predictions and our conference predictions. Both of us had the Celtics first in the East. Both of us had the Celtics coming out of the East. Then both of us picked OKC to win it all. One game overreaction. I'd like to revise my pick.
You can.
The Celtics put up, and I know they tied an NBA record for most three-pointers made in a game with 29. And I think they put up 61. They put up 61 three-pointers. Now, 13 of those, Bill, at the end were in service of hunting the record, and they didn't get there. But still, we talked about JJ earlier saying, hey, I would like the Lakers to put up 50 three-pointers on average per game. Lakers don't have the personnel for it. The Celtics do. The Celtics could do this, Bill. They could pull that off, and they might be I don't think it's going to happen, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could be the first team in NBA history to take more threes than twos this season.
Can I also tell you why I want to reverse my pick and take the Celtics?
Are we both going Celtics?
Thunder. Yeah. Totally different reasons. You're going analytical. You're going head. I'm going to go as you love. I'm going to go like armchair psychologist, 3,000 miles away, not even watching Celtics Knicks because I was at the Lakers game. But for me, there's one question there's one thing I feel like I know. I'm going to overreact to game one. I'm going to hold on to this. Championship hangovers are real for a reason. Pat Riley talked about whatever, the disease of more for a reason. It's human nature and everything. And the more you succeed, the more it's hard to hold on to the habits that got you there. That is just a fact. It's a fact. And the parity that's supposed to exist in the NBA now because of the way the system works is supposed to maybe reinforce that. We haven't had a repeat team in 6-7 years. The Jayson Tatum pissed off that he wasn't the finals MVP and that got treated by Steve Kerr at the Olympics like he's some kind of, also ran. And the Jaylen Brown, I didn't get to go to the Olympics, sort of chip on. It's real, man. Like, I've never seen a duo coming off a championship that looked like they had so much to prove. Wow, did Tatum hit 7 threes yesterday? He made 7? He hit 10 in the finals?
8 for 11 from
8.
three.
And how many did he make in the finals? I think he made 10. in the actual NBA Finals where
like
he
that.
struggled.
So the psychology
Dude,
of it,
watch out.
like I kind of was like, bulletin board material. They're professional basketball players, whatever. What I was looking for was a lot of people, as you mentioned, his 3-point shot, his shot in general during the playoffs last year did not look good. And then he goes to the Olympics and he wasn't used. And I think, there's really no shame in that because he's on a team of 12 guys in a 40-minute game that might be like the greatest. Well, he did, but as I was saying, it's maybe the greatest basketball team ever assembled. So somebody's got to sit. And so Tyrese Halliburton was like, yeah, I'm cool with it. But Jayson Tatum is obviously a level above that. Last night, Bill, from a basketball perspective, he came out like his hair was on fire. He looked amazing. His shot looked incredible. We were talking about, and we will talk about Mikal Bridges in a second, where his shot was a little funky. Jayson Tatum's shot looks he was Anthony Davis, but in Boston last night. He was the best player on the floor by a million miles, and he let everybody know it.
If that adjusted shot is fixed and I've seen that he's going to have a career year, and the guy was the best player last year on the best team in the NBA, and everybody's back, and Kristaps is going to get healthy. I mean, look, it's one game. It's the Knicks.
It's one game. It's the Knicks. But a couple of things here. So when we did our award predictions, we did not mention Jayson Tatum as an MVP candidate. He didn't finish top 5 last year, and the odds makers don't have him on the top 5 list either. All I'm saying is, and again, one game, small sample size, overreaction theater, all of that, all those caveats. He's always available. He plays almost every game. If he plays almost every game and his shot is fixed and they run away with the East again, or at least win it comfortably, I mean, they damaged the Knicks last night.
And look, we've talked about this. I think maybe it was radio where I said this. As somebody who votes, I try not to be swayed by the narratives, but they're powerful, right? There's this, if Jayson Tatum comes out and has a top 3 season, he's one of the 3 clear best players in the NBA. And he has a sort of statistical jump for whatever reason. I do think that I know they're pros. They're dudes too. They're human beings. I think it impacts them. But whatever the reason, if he is the second or third best candidate in a tight MVP race, I think he can win. If the Celtics are 64, 66 wins, because I don't think he deserved it last year, but I don't think Embiid deserved it, whatever it was 3 years ago, and then he got it the year after because there was this sort of idea of maybe we made a mistake and maybe we owe it to him. If he is at another level this entire year, he can absolutely be the MVP, depending on what other guys do.
Big picture for the Celtics here, Bill, just like to talk about the team and the way they looked. And this is, as I mentioned last night on HQ, this is the way they played last year, right? They took the most threes. They made the most threes. This year, they're looking to do even more of that. But they can do it. It is. 3 is greater than symbol 2, right? But all 5 of their starters can play like that. And by the way, Kristaps Porzingis isn't even in the lineup yet. They're going to add one of the best centers, one of the best 5-out guys onto their teams at some point later in this season, and they can just bring him along slowly because they don't need to rush him back. Did we underestimate the competition here? Because I think everybody saw what the Knicks did. I
think we overestimated.
Did we overestimate everybody else relative to the Celtics? Because it looks like they're going to run away with the East, or at least when it comes to it.
It's one game. I love the one game freak out.
By the way, Philly can't handle it.
Philly, you were right. I was wrong. Philly's a dark pit of despair, and I don't know why I believed. Enjoy the debut tonight without your 2 best players. Enjoy the game? Yeah, so Philly doesn't feel like a reliable contender. I don't want to overreact to the Knicks because they have some injuries. You're right. They are thinner. They look thinner. The thing that's really interesting is Cat, and I did not watch the game with the focus that you probably did, but talking to people who did and watching what I could and catching up, you got Cat, who's not a defensive stalwart and not a huge rim protector. And I love Jaylen Brunson. But he's not exactly a defensive force of nature either. So if you have 2 guys,
they did go at it defensively.
If you're trying to hide 2 guys or hide 1.5 guys, and Cat is a guy that has some deficiencies. I mean, I know there are some great perimeter defenders on that roster, and I know they've added some firepower in New York, but maybe we did. They can't be the 12th best or 14th best defense in the NBA and be a competitor to the Boston Celtics.
No, you can't, because the Celtics are going to have a top 1 or 2 offense and a top 1 or 2 defense.
Yes, top 2 of each.
And now what if you're the Knicks? And the now what, I still believe offensively, and again, they're playing you got to grade on a curve here. By the way, last night,
Right,
offense wasn't the Knicks' problem last night. They shot a better percentage from the floor than the Celtics did. They shot 55% from the floor, and they got blown out, Bill. I mean, like offensively, if you told me going into that game, Knicks are going to shoot 55% from the floor, I'm going to be like, okay, I don't know if they're going to win the game, but they're going to be in it. They were never in it. And that is dispiriting to say the least. So I think, you're grading on a curve because they're playing against the Celtics. And I thought offensively, Cat's going to be a fine fit. The pick and roll and the pick and pop are going to be there all season long for Jaylen Brunson and Cat. The defense thing, I expect.
How did they look together? Did it look, because again, did they look?
They look fun. So Cat
takes time.
Cat, it took him a second. He had some post-up moves, some little spins in the paint that looked okay. He only took 2 threes, so he didn't really move out. But they were behind so quickly that he only ended up playing 24 minutes, which was a little surprising because then Thibs decided, and I want to get to Thibs in a second because he did something not curious, but very on brand for Thibs last night. So I thought offensively, fine. Defensively, though, I expected, as we discussed, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, they're going to help you, sort of paper over some of Cat's deficiencies defensively. Hard to tell because it's the Celtics and they got 5 guys who can ruin you out there, but didn't look great from my perspective.
Yeah, maybe I'll go back and watch the whole thing. Because the thing is, I guess we're not having had the focus on it that you've had because I was in the Lakers game. Mm-hmm. I like to overreact. It's fun to overreact. I want to get caught up in the moment.
Me too.
It is the Boston Celtics and a banner-raising moment against a team that everyone said is their rival, so they have something to prove. With both Tatum and Brown sort of pissed off, the entire team returning, and a head coach who watches the town 58 times a week and is talking about funerals and death to keep his guys focused. Like, that is not an easy start to a new Knicks team where, again, you got a superstar trying to get used to a whole new thing. It'll be easier to assess when they play each other at some other point many games from now.
Just to dip into your corner a little bit with the psychology and how guys react as human beings and whatnot, right? Like the body language of Cat and Brunson when they're sitting in the fourth quarter wasn't great. And afterwards, Josh Hart was asked about it and he tried to make it into a joke. And he's like, they better drug test that entire team because I've never seen anything like it. I mean, the Knicks got their doors blown off and they knew it. They knew every bit about that, Bill. And here's one other thing I just wanted to run past you. So Thibs, I thought rightly looked at this thing and went, all right, we're getting crushed. I'm going to sit Cat. I'm going to sit in Brunson. But it's game 1 against a team that is very good and you get absolutely crushed. And in this process of getting crushed, Bill, he played Mikal Bridges 35 minutes, which fine. He's Mikal Bridges. He always plays like every minute of every game. He played OG Anunoby, who has an extensive injury history. 34 minutes, Bill.
This is what we talked. Don't do it.
Why?
He's addicted. So I was trying to pull this up. I don't have my notes in front of me, so I'm gonna summarize, try to remember as best I can the quote that I was given. But you talked about the body language. That's really interesting because I talked to an executive at a pretty significant rival, Eastern Conference rival, about Cat a week or 2 ago and asked him, like, how's this going to work? And he had this, his interesting thing was, he goes, it's a clash of 2 cultures. And this is his words, not mine. He goes, on the one hand, you have the sort of Villanova Knicks that are still there and this amazing culture with Thibs, and it enhances everybody. And if that is what if they take Cat and they raise him to that level and they incorporate him, the Knicks are on fire. But he said that Cat is known to be a little truculent, not always focused on defense, gets in his feelings. And I think there were more negative things he said, but I don't have my notes. But it was like he basically is like telling a guy who can be a problem if Cat isn't reachable, if he doesn't respond to the sort of Villanova Knicks thing, if he doesn't incorporate into the culture, but instead sort of drags it down a little bit. That was his big thing. It's like it is going to come down to when they get healthy whether or not the Knicks change Cat or Cat changes the Knicks, which I think it's early, but it's interesting and. Right? Like how you respond to being demoralized. Do you respond the way the Knicks always have and Brunson always has, or do you respond the way, according to this executive who's smart, the way that Cat always has, which is not very successfully? I think is a big question people are talking about around the NBA.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I still would bet on Knicks top line talent is good. Karl Anthony Towns is good. They played the Celtics. Relative to the rest of the Eastern Conference, I still like their chances to play well and be a top seed in the Eastern Conference. It's just that, early returns on, hey, how do they
play well and be a top
Celtics?
seed is a lower standard than 24 hours ago. For both of us.
You're right. You're 100% right. It absolutely is. I think it's, again, small sample size, didn't look great the way that they matched up against the Celtics. I think that they'll match up better against other teams. I just want to go back, though, to the Knicks rotation and Thibs, because beyond playing OG 34 minutes, which is very curious, and it was a, blowout, and so maybe the lineup rotations are a little bit wonky here, but first guy off the bench was Jericho Sims for Cat. Okay, that's fine. You need a big. Interesting to me, I thought Deuce McBride looked really good. He got up a bunch of shots, and we talked about him as a potential sixth man of the year for the Knicks. He's going to get a lot of run, and he's going to have a lot of volume. I thought he was fine. We talked about when they drafted him, Pacome Dadier. They ended up running campaign out there and Pacome Dadier, and it wasn't just in garbage time that Dadier got some minutes. They brought him in like relatively early for some. It's like,
how did he look?
He's bigger than I thought.
Yeah,
he looked okay. He looked okay, but I think it was a concern for me when I was like, oh no, like, is campaign going to have to be a major part of their rotation? Because like that roster, after you get to Deuce and even Jericho Sims, that's it. Like with no Mitchell Robinson, they've got 7 guys.
I mean, early days, and that is a coach who doesn't run deep, and as we've discussed 1,000 times. So probably not. I don't know. It's interesting.
I don't love it. The Knicks, one injury away from going, oh no, what do we do with this?
Do you want to lower them? Guys. You made him 2, right? We both had him 2 in the East. You want to put him? You want to get on that Cleveland bandwagon that a bunch of our colleagues are on? I think Sam Quinn was on.
We in the last 24 to 48 hours, you and I went from, man, the East is pretty good this year too. I don't like anybody in the East except for the
suck.
Oh man, wow. Well, we got a full night of basketball coming up tonight. Last night was technically opening night. Tonight is really opening night. Right now, everybody gets
I'm going to the Clippers game. You hear my excitement?
This is great. I'm excited for you to report back tomorrow about the Intuit Dome, the toilet bowl, where they've got 15,000 or 1,500 toilets in the whole bit. I want to hear a full report about that. Who they have? The Suns tonight, right?
Suns, which I am actually interested in watching the Suns. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Well, right. You're not on tomorrow. I just realized.
Oh, I don't get to talk to you. Why can't I want to be on Thursdays too. All right.
Tomorrow is Thursday. We've got a new rotation. So Sam Quinn will join me tomorrow, and you and I will talk about the Intuit Dome when you come back on Monday.
Toilet update Monday.
But, tomorrow it's going to be me and Sam Quinn. On Friday, you'll be back with Brad Bodkin. But we've got, as I mentioned, 5 days a week. Come and join us live on YouTube every single day, noon Eastern. You can find us at Beyond the Arc CBS, or if you missed that, you can catch us wherever you get your favorite podcast. But this was super fun. I'm glad that you saw Bronny's debut and that you got to report on it live. And have a good time with Brad on Friday and tonight when you go to the Intuit Dome.
I'll hit you up I'll give you a toilet report before Monday. I got you.
Please give me I'm looking forward to that coming in via text. All right, that's going to do it for us for today. For our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, I am John Gonzalez. We thank you so much for tuning in and listening, and I'll see you tomorrow.